You didn't find this message by accident. Somewhere in the quiet between your breath and your next thought, a deeper part of you has already been listening. Tonight, I invite you to slow down, not to solve anything, not to become anything, but to notice the truth already humming beneath your ordinary moments. That reality is not something you wait for. It's something you're already shaping. Whether you're curled up in a quiet room, lying beneath a blanket of stars, or letting this play in the background of a busy mind, you've arrived in exactly the right place. So take a breath. Let it be slow. Feel your body soften. And allow yourself to remember you're not behind, you're not broken, and you're not waiting for the universe to catch up. You're already broadcasting a signal the universe is mirroring back. What you feel, what you expect, what you embody, it's not decoration, it's instruction. In this story, we'll step gently into the quiet mechanics behind that process, not to impress the mind, but to soothe it. Together, we'll explore the unseen field that listens to who you are beneath your words. Subscribe if you'd like more of these quiet journeys. And now, settle in. The shift has already begun. Before we go further, pause, not to fix anything, not to understand, just to notice the stillness behind the movement of your thoughts. That stillness, the one that's not asking for effort, is where this begins. Because long before you called anything into your life, before you thought the right thoughts, or said the right words, or made the right moves, you are already resonating. You are already broadcasting. And what was listening was not a universe deciding whether you were worthy. It was a field responding to who you were being. This isn't philosophy. This is pattern. The same way light bends around mass, the same way atoms organize into form when observed, the same way birds align in flight as if choreographed by thoughtless intelligence, so too does your world organize around your frequency. And your frequency is not what you try to send. It's what you unconsciously sustain. You were told early that life comes at you like weather, that your job was to endure it, or perhaps to improve it by working hard, doing right, and hoping eventually it rewards you. But what if life doesn't actually work that way? What if reality is not cause and effect the way you've been taught, but cause and reflection? What if your mood isn't the reaction to your reality, but the mold that shapes it? This is not a denial of hardship. It's an invitation to understand it differently. Reality isn't fixed. It's fluid. And the self you wake up is the one you breathe from, the one you emotionally embody before a single word leaves your lips, is the one that reality mirrors. Not eventually, immediately. The delay isn't in the universe. It's in the continuity of your signal. There's no need to strain. Just let your awareness turn gently inward, like light reflecting back into itself. The world is not judging you. It's synchronizing with you. That's the quiet secret ancient mystics and modern quantum physicists keep pointing to with different languages. There is a field, call it quantum, call it spirit, call it consciousness, that doesn't respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you stabilize. And the difference between the two is not intellectual, it's vibrational. You can think affirmations while still embodying fear. You can recite mantras while still holding resistance. But when your body and your breath and your emotion unify into one clear frequency, that's coherence. And coherence is what this universe knows how to follow. Let's try something together, not to achieve, but to feel. Gently inhale through your nose. Let the air fill you slowly, as if the moment itself is expanding inside you. Then exhale through your mouth, longer than you think you need. Let it be soft. Again, inhale and exhale. This isn't just relaxation. It's communication. Your body is a tuning fork, and this breath is how you tell it what to broadcast. Because before you speak, before you think, your nervous system is already saying something. It's already announcing who you believe yourself to be. And every emotion you permit to settle becomes a signal. Gratitude? It signals completion. Safety? It signals openness. Love? It signals trust. These are not just feelings, they are instructions. And the field listens. You don't need to try harder. You need to feel deeper, not in a dramatic sense, but in a subtle, stabilizing one. This is where most people struggle, not because it's hard, but because it's so unfamiliar. We've been trained to effort our way into change, but effort comes from lack. Coherence comes from knowing, and knowing is quiet. It doesn't grasp, it doesn't plead. It settles into itself with trust. Because the field doesn't grant wishes, it synchronizes with what's already present in you. Let's test this, not in belief, but in gentle imagination. What would the version of you who already feels free breathe like? Would their shoulders be tight or soft? Would their brow be furrowed or relaxed? Would their pace feel urgent or spacious? Feel it, not as fantasy, but as information. This isn't visualization for the sake of hoping. It's rehearsal. And your body doesn't know the difference between a vividly felt state and a physically experienced one. Your brain fires the same pathways. Your chemistry begins to shift. Your energy field begins to broadcast something new, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Here's the twist. Most people stop here. They visualize, they feel it, and then they check. Did it work? Is it showing up yet? Has the thing arrived? But in that moment of checking, they interrupt the signal. Because checking is another way of waiting. And waiting is the frequency of not yet. The universe doesn't listen to hope. It listens to being. So once you feel it, release it. Let the frequency go like a bird you trust to return. Say silently, "It is done." And then go about your day, not looking for confirmation, but carrying the tone of someone who knows. Longer doubts. That's where the magic begins. Not in the instant manifestation of outcomes, but in the quiet erosion of the part of you that was, still waiting to become. The more often you align your inner state with the vibration of what you say you want, the less you want it at all, because you've already stabilized it within. And from that place, reality shifts not as a surprise, but as a natural echo. Still, subtle disruptions can knock us out of coherence. Let's name a few, not as flaws, but as gentle reminders. The first is invisible checking, repeatedly scanning your inbox, rereading texts, watching for signs. Though it feels like curiosity, it's often rooted in disbelief. And disbelief is a frequency. The second is emotional flashback. You're aligned for a moment, and then a delay or an obstacle throws you into an old identity. That's not failure. It's just a familiar script being played. Notice it. Pause. Return to breath. Every return is a new command. The third is urgency disguised as action. You take steps, but they're fueled by fear, not inspiration. The body knows the difference. Inspired action feels like movement without pressure. Urgent doing feels like swimming upstream. Trust the difference. The fourth is story repetition. Those quiet phrases you tell yourself that seem harmless. It's always like this. This never works. I need to do more. These aren't just words. They're templates. They set the architecture for what you're available to receive. And finally, the fifth is ritualizing your frequency. Work like a to-do list. If your breath work, journaling, or meditations become checkboxes instead of invitations, you're no longer feeling, you're performing. And the universe doesn't mirror performance. It mirrors presence. So the path forward isn't more effort. It's more awareness, not hyper-analysis, just gentle noticing. The breath, the tone, the posture of your being. You don't need to hold the vision all day. Just hold the vibration clearly and cleanly for a few sacred minutes. and let that be enough. Let the field do what it's designed to do. Respond. Now here's a challenge, but offered softly. For the next 24 hours, live as if there's nothing left to manifest. Not because you're giving up, but because you're no longer postponing. You're being. Let your breath be unhurried. Let your tone soften. Let your reactions slow. When you reply to a message, do it with the calm of someone who has already arrived. When you look in the mirror, let your eyes say, I remember. The universe listens not to urgency, but to the frequency of peace. And peace isn't passive. It's magnetic. You don't attract what you chase. You attract what you allow yourself to become. Let us go deeper. Now, not pushing, but by softening. You've begun to glimpse that what you call your life is not merely a sequence of events, but a series of mirrors. Reflections not of your thoughts alone, but of your sustained inner rhythm. Not the mood you touch once a day during meditation, but the tone your body unconsciously carries hour after hour. You are not manifesting by willpower. You are manifesting by memory. And most of that memory is stored not in words, but in your nervous system. Think of your body as an antenna wrapped in emotion. Every sensation, every tightening, every flutter in the chest or drop in the gut, it's all part of a broadcast. Not metaphorically, biologically. If you've lived many years in stress, your cells have memorized cortisol as normal. If you've lived with grief, your body may recognize heaviness as home. This isn't wrong. This isn't broken. It's brilliant. Your system is always trying to protect you by predicting your environment. But here's the catch. Prediction is based on repetition, which means your future, unless interrupted, becomes a remix of your emotional past. So the question becomes, how do you interrupt the signal? Not with resistance, but with resonance. Not by fighting your old self, but by stabilizing the frequency of who you're becoming long enough for the body to believe it's safe. That's where the shift begins. When safety isn't something you find in the world, but something you feel inside your skin. And that kind of safety doesn't come from logic. It comes from practice. It comes from breath. It comes from letting the version of you who's already free be felt not as fiction, but as rehearsal. Let's imagine this in motion. You wake in the morning. Your mind wants to run, check, remember, analyze. But instead, you pause. You inhale. You feel your body without trying to fix it. You notice, what signal am I waking into? Is it tension? Is it pressure? Is it curiosity? And rather than labeling it good or bad, you simply breathe into it. And then you gently begin to tune. Not with affirmations shouted at the mirror, but with tones whispered through your body. What does it feel like to be at peace? Not the idea of peace, the texture, the temperature, the rhythm. You sit with that not perfectly, but honestly. And when the signal stabilizes, you rise. That's embodiment. That's the art of walking as the version of yourself who already is. Not because you've achieved anything externally, but because your inner state has changed its anchor. And that anchor begins to drag your outer world into alignment. Here's a strange truth. The quantum field is not personal. It's precise. It's not giving you what you deserve or desire. It's giving you what you consistently hold. That's why even kind, intelligent people who dream big often live small. Because they are resonating without realizing it with absence. They are vibrating in the frequency of delay. They are living from the emotion of not yet. And the field mirrors it with mathematical neutrality. So what changes that? Clarity, not just in vision, but in signal. And clarity requires subtraction. Fewer thoughts, fewer contradictions. Not more doing, but more being. That's why the moments when change feels effortless are the ones when you're most surrendered on a walk, in the shower, listening to music, laughing unexpectedly. Because in those moments, your brain has stopped fighting. Your body has relaxed. Your frequency has unified. This is why trying often delays results. When you try to attract love while vibrating with loneliness, you don't draw love, you draw its echo. When you chase wealth while rooted in fear of lack, you create cycles of just enough. When you seek purpose while doubting your worth, life reflects confusion. The solution isn't to want harder. It's to feel different. Let's return to metaphor. Imagine your reality as water, and your state of being is the tuning fork dropped into it. The clearer the frequency, the cleaner the ripple. A murky tone built from mixed emotions, doubts, and fears creates distortion. But a pure tone? It vibrates the water into order. This is not magic. It is structure. The field is structured. To respond now, does this mean you must always feel good to create good? Not at all. This isn't toxic positivity. In fact, your ability to feel sorrow without collapsing into it, to feel anger without broadcasting it, is itself a kind of mastery. The field doesn't require perfection. It requires coherence. And coherence sometimes means sitting with what is honestly, without letting it run the show. Emotion is energy. It's only sticky when resisted. When felt fully, it moves. And once it moves, your signal clears. Think of your emotional body as a lens. If you smear the lens with unprocessed feeling, guilt, shame, fear, your light still shines, but the beam becomes scattered. The work is not to stop shining. The work is to clean the lens, breath by breath, moment by moment, until the light is pure. Let me offer you a different kind of ritual, one that doesn't require journals or vision boards, just presence. At any point in your day, pause and ask, what frequency am I in right now? Not as self-criticism, but as curiosity. And then ask, is this the frequency of the life I say I want? If yes, breathe it deeper. If not, gently shift, not by faking, but by feeling. Choose a micro-emotion that leans you closer. Curiosity, calm, appreciation. Hold it. Let it color your body. Let it color your tone. And then keep moving. This is how you train reality. Not through pressure, but through gentle consistency. But even with this knowing, you may find yourself caught in loops. Why? Because loops are familiar, and familiarity feels safe even if it's painful. You may say you want change, but your nervous system has been trained to expect the old. So when something new begins to emerge, it can feel dangerous. That's biology. Your work is not to override it, but to soothe it. To let your body know gently that it's safe to receive something different. You are not just changing thoughts. You are changing identity. And identity is sticky. It's the collection of all the frequencies you've rehearsed into reality. But identity is also plastic, malleable. And the more you feel as your future self, the less you recognize the grip of your old one. Not because you're pretending, but because you're remembering who you were beneath the fear, who you are, without the need to prove anything. This is where the story begins to shift, not with effort, but with embodiment. You are not calling something in, you are calling something up. You're not magnetizing an outcome, you are stabilizing the self who has already received it. And that self does not plead, that self does not check. That self breathes, moves, speaks, and rests from a place of settled knowing. And in that knowing, the field says, confirmed. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. Your state is the request. Your vibration is the command. Your consistency is the confirmation. And the field does not discriminate. It simply reflects. The question is no longer, when will it arrive? The question is, who am I being while I wait? And the answer to that question, that tone, that texture, that feeling is shaping. everything that follows. Let's return to where we started, but look again with new eyes. What if the most powerful form of creation is not the moment you set a goal, but the moment you forget you're trying? What if the turning point is not when you receive the outcome, but when you no longer need it to feel whole? The world has taught you that striving is strength, and that the evidence of success is what proves you're doing it right. But in the quantum reality we've quietly stepped into together, the opposite is often true. In stillness, the universe hears you more clearly. In surrender, reality collapses faster. In presence, manifestation becomes inevitable not because you demanded it, but because you stopped resisting it. There is a version of you already living the life you seek, not in some distant timeline, but in a frequency waiting to be remembered. It's not summoned, it's stabilized. And to stabilize it, you don't need to do more. You need to interrupt the momentum of who you've been pretending to be. Because pretending is heavy. Pretending keeps you busy. Pretending says, maybe someday. But presence says, it's already begun. Let's go inside that, not just metaphorically, but somatically. Take a breath, not as a technique, but as a transmission. Inhale like someone who trusts life is already moving toward them. Exhale like someone who no longer rushes toward anything. Feel the way your shoulders fall, the way your face softens. That right there is a signal shift. And the body remembers, because at the deepest level, your identity isn't a personality. It's a pattern. It's a repeated set of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. And once that pattern stabilizes, it attracts reality around it like a magnet. But here's the good news. Patterns can be repatterned. Frequencies can be tuned. Even if you've lived decades inside fear, it only takes minutes of embodied safety to start a new loop. Not by rejecting your past, but by no longer rehearsing it. Here's something many people miss. The field doesn't require you to fix your trauma before you align. Healing can happen inside the frequency of wholeness. You don't need to earn your way into peace. You can choose peace and let that be the environment in which the old begins to dissolve. Not by force, but by lack of attention. What you stop feeding stops growing. This is the paradox. Most people try to feel better so they can create change. But the deeper truth is this. When you decide you're already okay, change begins to organize itself around that signal. Peace is not the end result. It is the preconditioned dot. Let me offer you a new way to think about manifestation. Not as building something, but as tuning into something. You are not a builder. You are a broadcaster. And the cleaner your signal, the clearer the response. Clean doesn't mean pure. It means consistent. It means not doubting it as soon as it begins to show up. It means not falling back into the story of struggle every time something takes longer than your ego hoped. Because let's be honest, this is where the real work begins. In the space between intention and outcome. In the long hallway of not yet. It's in that hallway that most people forget. They start to check. They start to shrink. They start to bargain. And the signal fractures. But what if the hallway wasn't a delay? What if it was the sacred training ground of becoming? Every moment you spend walking like someone who knows. Every time you exhale as if it's already yours. Every time you catch your body broadcasting the old story and gently recalibrate, that's the work. That's the collapse. That's when reality begins to bend around your signal like light through a prism. Let's talk about trust. Not the kind printed on affirmations or spoken in nervous hope, but real trust. The kind that sits still when no evidence has arrived. The kind that smiles when the bank account doesn't match the vision. A kind that still breathes deep when someone else gets what you wanted first. This kind of trust is rare. Not because it's hard, but because it's unfamiliar. But here's the truth. Trust is not passive. Trust is not waiting. Trust is a vibration. It is an act of selection. It is a declaration that your internal reality is no longer dependent on external conditions to validate it. And when you live that declaration, not once, but daily, you become the attractor point for a different sequence. You don't have to believe this all at once. Belief takes time, but you can begin with willingness. Willingness to pause, to breathe, to soften, to rehearse the emotional future you long for, not in fantasy, but in feeling. Because your nervous system doesn't know the difference between memory and imagination. Both are frequencies, and both can shape you. You can begin today, not by changing your life, but by changing how you inhabit it. Brush your teeth like someone who is already loved. Eat your meal like someone who already trusts. Walk into rooms like someone whose worth is not on trial. Send your messages like someone who isn't performing. And notice what happens not out there, but in here. The silence between your thoughts gets warmer. The background tension begins to lift. And strange things begin to unfold without your intervention. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. This brings us to the final and most important piece. Letting go, not as surrender to disappointment, but as release into alignment. Because what you cling to, you often delay. Grasping is a frequency, and so is allowing. When you allow, you create space. When you allow, you broadcast trust. When you allow, the field moves because it no longer has to push against your control. And yes, it will test you. The universe often checks for signal consistency by offering the opposite of what you asked for, not to punish you, but to ask, is your state conditional or stabilized? That's why emotional agility matters more than emotional perfection. The faster you return to your chosen signal, the faster your world begins to reflect it. Remember, reality doesn't deliver by logic. It delivers by resonance. So breathe again, right now. Wherever you are, let the breath be slow. Let it be soft. And as you breathe, ask yourself gently, honestly, what am I a match to right now? Not in theory, but in sensation, in tone, in posture. You don't need to fix anything. Just notice. And if that noticing invites a shift, let it be small. Let it be real. Let it be kind. Because the field isn't listening to your words. It's listening to your nervous system. The truth is, you are already shaping it. With every emotion you allow, every reaction you interrupt, every quiet exhale that whispers, I am safe now. That is creation. That is coherence. That is quantum command. And the beauty of this journey is that you never needed to chase your future. You only needed to remember how to feel it. Right here. Right now, without waiting. You are no longer trying to become. You are being. And that is enough. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the center of a vast, invisible cathedral. Not one built of stone or glass, but of frequencies. The pillars are your repeated emotions. The windows are your memories. The ceiling arches are the beliefs you've rehearsed for, so long they feel like structure itself. You've walked through this cathedral every day of your life without realizing it, thinking it was the world. But it was always the architecture of your own, being reflected back to you. The question is not whether you're inside one of these cathedrals. The question is, which one have you been building? And which one do you wish to inhabit now? Every breath you've taken, every sigh of relief, every silent tremor of fear, it has all been mortar. Frequencies repeated become form. And this is not punishment. It is poetry. The universe does not impose. It mirrors. That's why when you change the inner, the outer must eventually bend, though at first, the scaffolding may creak and resist. Think of a tuning fork humming inside a room. If struck long enough, everything around it begins to vibrate in harmony, even the objects that resisted at first. That's coherence. That's what you are capable of stabilizing. But here's the paradox you will face. When you first begin to broadcast a new frequency, say, peace after years of anxiety, the outer world often seems to amplify the old pattern. Unexpected bills arrive. Old arguments flare. Delays multiply. Why? Because your reality has inertia. The old signal has been dominant for years, maybe decades. It takes time for the cathedral to reorganize. This is not failure. This is momentum. Unwinding. The worst thing you can do here is collapse back into the old story, saying, see, it didn't work. That is like tuning a guitar string, hearing it wobble and declaring music impossible. No, hold the tone. Breathe, stabilize. The echo. Well, catch up. Now, let's make this practical. Each day, your body wakes with a remembered script. Before thought, before words, it broadcasts a feeling tone. Often that tone is borrowed from yesterday, which means if yesterday carried worry, today begins in its shadow. But this is where awareness interrupts the loop. The moment you wake, you can pause, hand on chest, breath into belly, and you can ask not with force, but with softness. What is the signal I want to inhabit today? Not what do I want to get, but who do I choose to be? That is the axis upon which everything turns. Try this now, even as you listen. Let your breath slow. Let the question drop. What frequency feels like home? Don't think. Feel. Maybe it's calm. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's love. Whichever arises, breathe it deeper. Imagine it soaking into your chest like sunlight, into skin. Then let your body carry it as posture. Shoulders ease. Neck loosens. A subtle smile creeps without demand. And here's the key. Don't just feel it for yourself. Walk it into your next action. Make tea with that signal. Answer a message with that signal. Step into the street with that signal. This is embodiment. This is how the cathedral begins to re-architect itself around you. Let's explore something unusual: synchronicity. You've noticed it before, those moments when the right song plays at the right time, when a stranger says the exact phrase you needed, when numbers repeat until they feel like winks from the fabric of reality. These are not accidents. They are echoes of coherence. When your inner frequency steadies, reality begins to arrange itself into patterns that reflect it. Carl Jung called it synchronicity. Mystics call it alignment. Scientists call it non-local. Correlation. It doesn't matter the language. What matters is the recognition. These moments are not rare. They are constant. It is only your scattered signal that makes them hard to see. When you stabilize, you begin to notice them everywhere. And the noticing itself becomes a kind of dialogue with the universe. Now, let's look at the emotional undertow, the subtle saboteurs. Sometimes the biggest fracture in coherence comes not from big doubts, but from quiet habits of thought. You say, I'm aligned, but underneath, you're replaying memories of when it didn't work. You whisper to yourself, it always takes too long. These aren't harmless. They are frequencies rehearsed, and the field mirrors them just as faithfully as your conscious intentions. This is why presence matters. Every time you notice the old story creeping in, you have a choice. Reinforce it or release it, not with judgment, but with gentleness. A simple breath can reset the signal faster than hours of analysis. Here's the strangest part. You don't need to convince the universe. You only need to convince your body. The field is neutral. It responds to the signal of your nervous system. That's why people who don't even believe in manifestation sometimes experience it. They feel safe. They expect ease, and reality echoes. Meanwhile, those who study it obsessively or remain in fear often find themselves blocked. Not because they don't understand, but because their body is still broadcasting incoherence. This is why healing is less about knowledge and more about state. A safe body is a clear broadcaster. Think of children. Watch how easily they imagine, how fully they embody the roles they play, how they lose themselves in states without questioning whether they're real. That's coherence. That's embodiment. And reality responds to it just as it did for you once, before you were taught to doubt, to wait, to earn. Returning to that innocence isn't regression. It's remembering. You can still plan, work, and act, but not from desperation, from embodiment. And that difference changes everything. So here's a quiet practice. Throughout your day, whisper this to yourself. I am not waiting. Say it when you notice yourself scanning for signs. Say it when you feel impatience rising. Say it when you start bargaining with the future. Each time, let it anchor you back into presence. Because every moment of non-waiting strengthens the new signal. And every moment of waiting feeds the old. 1. The field is listening, always. Not to your words, but to your state. Now, another curiosity. Have you ever noticed how the most profound changes often arrive sideways, not head-on? You set an intention for abundance, and instead, your relationships shift. You ask for love, and instead, your health improves. You want clarity, and instead, your job changes. Why? Because the field knows sequence better than you do. It arranges reality, not in the straight lines of your logic, but in the spirals of resonance. That's why trust is so vital. Trust lets you say, even if it doesn't look like what I imagined, I know it's aligned with the frequency I stabilized. This is how you stop judging results prematurely and let them unfold with elegance. The more you live this way, the stranger life becomes. But the strangeness is not chaotic. It's ordered. It's synchronistic. It's meaningful. And you begin to understand that what you once called coincidence was always communication. The field has always been speaking. You just weren't attuned. Now you are. And now reality feels less like something that happens to you and more like something that happens with you. Pause here. Notice your breath again. Notice the texture of your skin against the air. Notice the way your body feels after absorbing these words. This is not performance. This is practice. And each time you return here, the signal strengthens. That's the real manifestation. Not objects, not outcomes, but the stabilization of a self who no longer doubts they are already part of the field they once thought was separate. The truth is simple, though rarely easy. You are not waiting for life. Life is waiting for you to stop waiting. What if I told you that your body already remembers the future you are seeking? Not in words, not in visions, but in sensation. Think of it like this. Every version of you already exists in the quantum field, vibrating as a possibility. The one who is free, the one who is loved, the one who is abundant. These aren't waiting to be built. They're waiting to be stabilized. And the bridge is not effort, but familiarity. The more familiar your nervous system becomes with the signal of that version, the faster the outer world organizes to match it. Which means the work of transformation is not to create something new, but to rehearse the future until it feels like memory. This is why gratitude is such a powerful key. True gratitude is not a performance, it is a state of completion. When you embody gratitude, your body believes it has already received, and the field responds accordingly. But here's the subtlety. You can't fake it. If you try to feel grateful while secretly vibrating with lack, the signal is mixed. Coherence requires honesty. So rather than forcing grand gratitude for what hasn't yet appeared, start small. Gratitude for the softness of your breath. Gratitude for the weight of your body on the chair. Gratitude for the sound of these words, arriving exactly when they needed to. These micro moments stack, weaving the nervous system into safety. And safety is the soil in which coherence grows. Now, let's dive deeper into the paradox of surrender. Most people think surrender means giving up. But in the quantum view, surrender is the exact opposite. It's not collapsing into despair. It's releasing the grasping signal of lack. When you release, you create space for the field to synchronize. When you cling, you broadcast fear. So surrender becomes not a loss of power, but a refinement of it. Imagine holding water in a clenched fist it leaks. But open your palm, and the water rests. This is how energy works. The less you squeeze, the more it stays. And yet, this is the hardest lesson. Because your mind will insist, if I don't push, nothing happens. That's because the mind has been trained in linear cause and effect. But the field doesn't follow linearity. It follows resonance. Which means sometimes the greatest movement happens when you appear to be still. A day of true alignment can shift more than years of frantic effort. The challenge is trusting that. Trusting what feels invisible. Trusting the unseen scaffolding being built in the background. Trusting that when you soften, you're not regressing. You're synchronizing that. This is where strange phenomena begin to emerge. You think of someone, and they call. You release a fear, and an unexpected opportunity arises. You soften into safety, and suddenly conversations shift in your favor. Behold, you might call this coincidence, but in truth, these are not random. They are the reflections of coherence. The universe is constantly arranging itself around your signal. It's just that most people change their broadcasts so often, the pattern never stabilizes. The more consistent you become, the more the fabric of reality begins to bend toward order, as though it has been waiting for you all along. Think of it like tuning into a radio station. If you spin the dial every few seconds, all you hear is static. But hold it steady, and the song comes through. Reality is the same. Your future self is already broadcasting, but your nervous system must tune to the right station long enough for the song to be heard. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. It's not about feeling perfect joy once. It's about feeling calm, gratitude, or trust steadily enough that the field knows where to meet you. Let's practice together. Imagine something you've long wanted, not as a distant dream, but as a presence. Instead of seeing the picture, feel the state. If it's love, breathe as if you're already cherished. If it's abundance, soften as if everything is already enough. If it's freedom, let your shoulders fall as if the weight has already lifted. Notice how the body changes. Notice how the breath lengthens. Notice how a subtle peace creeps in, uninvited. That is the signal. And when you sustain it, even for a few minutes, you are training reality. But here's the deeper key. After you feel it, release it. Let it go like an echo that doesn't need to return. Declare silently, it is done. Then walk away without checking, without bargaining, without scanning for signs. This is the most difficult step because it requires you to live as if you trust the invisible. But once you master it, you begin to see what mystics and quantum scientists alike have always pointed toward. Reality does not delay because the field is cruel. Reality delays because you are oscillating. When you stabilize, reality has no choice but to follow. And yet, you will be tested. The field often checks the strength of your signal by offering the opposite of what you've aligned to. You call in abundance, and suddenly an unexpected expense appears. You call in love, and an old wound resurfaces. This is not sabotage. It is resonance verification. The field is asking, is your frequency conditional or unconditional? Do you hold it only when life rewards you, or do you stabilize it no matter what? Every time you hold steady in the face of contradiction, you amplify the power of your signal. This is where mastery is born. Let's pause for reflection. Can you remember a time when something arrived not because you worked harder, but because you stopped grasping? Perhaps a relationship that unfolded when you stopped chasing. A creative idea that appeared when you gave up forcing. A solution that emerged after sleep, not strain. These are hints from life itself, teaching you that surrender is not absence of action, it's alignment of action. When you act from coherence, your movements are small but magnetic. They ripple outward with disproportionate effect. So the invitation of this part is simple. Rehearse your future until it feels like memory. Not as fantasy, but as nervous system familiarity. The future you long for is not waiting to be created, it is waiting to be recognized. And when your body recognizes it, the field mirrors it back. This is not effort. This is resonance. This is embodiment. You are not learning to become someone new. You are remembering who you already are. What if reality has never been outside of you at all? What if every person, every event, every so-called coincidence was not random circumstance, but choreography, an echo of your inner rhythm played out on the stage of your life? This idea unsettles the mind because it shifts responsibility. Longer can we say, life did this to me. Instead, we whisper, life responded through me. And this is not blame, it is liberation. Because if reality is responding, then you are not powerless. You are the author, not of every detail, but of the tone. And tone is what determines the music. Think of your life as a song being played back to you in real time. When the inner instruments are chaotic fear clashing with hope, gratitude buried under resentment, the melody becomes dissonant. But when the inner band tunes to coherence, the music outside begins to harmonize. Conversations soften, doors open, synchronicities multiply. This isn't reward, it's resonance. The universe is not keeping score. It is keeping rhythm. Yet, here is where most stumble. The moment life reflects something unwanted, they assume the song is broken. They judge themselves, or worse, they abandon the practice entirely. But what if those moments are not punishment, but invitations? A sour note does not ruin the symphony. It reveals where the instrument needs tuning. Your task is not to condemn yourself, but to retune, breath by breath, choice by choice. This is the real mastery, not perfection, but return. So let's return to the body again, because the body is the transmitter. Your mind can dream of freedom, but if your chest is tight and your stomach clenched, the field doesn't hear freedom. It hears constriction. Your lips can say, I am loved, but if your nervous system is rehearsing abandonment, the signal is fractured. This is why affirmations alone so often fail. They decorate the mind without transforming the body. The real work is embodiment. To breathe as if the love is here. To walk as if abundance already surrounds you. To answer messages as if safety is your natural state. That's the frequency that transmits, and the field listens. Consider this. Every morning, before thought rushes in, your body is already broadcasting. That's why the first moments of the day matter so much. The old self wants to reach for the phone, check the messages, confirm the story of yesterday. But coherence asks you to pause. Before you scroll, before you engage, sit with the body and ask, what signal am I carrying into this day? If it is tension, breathe until it softens. If it is peace, deepen it. If it is gratitude, let it spread. This simple ritual, done daily, is how futures change. Not by chasing, but by broadcasting differently from the start. Now, let's step into something subtler. Identity as frequency. Identity isn't the story you tell about yourself. Identity is the emotional tone you rehearse most often. Someone who sees themselves as unlucky doesn't merely think unlucky thoughts. They feel the weight of disappointment before life even answers. Someone who sees themselves as loved doesn't just recite it. They feel warmth in the body, safety in the breath, openness in the heart. Identity is what you expect without speaking. And reality responds not to your words, but to that expectation. This is why change feels so slippery. You say you want abundance, but your identity is the one who waits. You say you want love, but your identity is the one who doubts. These are not flaws, they are rehearsals. And rehearsals can be rewritten. The moment you notice the old role, you can pause and ask, what identity am I broadcasting right now? Not to judge, but to choose. Then shift gently, not with force, but with feeling. Breathe into the body of the one who already has what you seek. Let that version guide your tone, your posture, your choices. The more often you do this, the more the old identity dissolves, not by fight, but by neglect. Now, here's the paradox. You'll face, as you stabilize the new signal, the old reality may resist. Bills may rise, conflicts may flare, delays may extend. This is not failure. This is physics. Old momentum doesn't vanish overnight. It winds down like a spinning wheel. The temptation is to collapse. See, it's not working. But the truth is, it's working perfectly. The wheel is slowing. The pattern is unraveling. Your task is not to panic, but to hold steady. To keep breathing as if you already are who you declared yourself to be. This is where transformation actually anchors, not in the easy moments, but in the contradictions. Every time you choose the new signal instead of the old reaction, you weave another thread of the new reality. Have you noticed how time itself changes when you're coherent? Minutes feel longer, but days feel shorter. Small tasks flow easily, yet hours dissolve without resistance. This is not illusion, it is perception aligning with frequency. When you are coherent, your nervous system shifts from survival mode into creation mode. Time stretches where it needs to, contracts where it must, and events seem to arrange themselves with uncanny precision. The world feels less like a linear grind and more like a living conversation. And in that conversation, you are no longer begging. You are participating. Here's a practice to deepen this. Throughout the day, whisper to yourself, I am broadcasting now, not later, not after the evidence arrives. Now, every sigh, every tone of voice, every gesture is a transmission. And you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be aware. When you notice tension, soften it. When you catch the old story, release it. When you feel gratitude, extend it. Each adjustment is like tuning a string, and the more often you tune, the clearer the song becomes. The mind will ask, but when will it show up? That question itself is the fracture, because asking when implies not yet. The more you wait, the more you broadcast waiting. Instead, shift the question. Who am I being right now? If the answer matches the signal of your desired life, you are already inside it. The evidence will follow, because it must. Reality is not withholding, it is calibrating. And calibration takes as long as your consistency. Pause here again. Feel the chair beneath you. Feel your breath. Notice the subtle hum of being alive. This hum, this aliveness, is the signal you've been overlooking. It is already broadcasting safety. It is already broadcasting presence. All you are doing is amplifying it into coherence. This is not new. This is remembering God. And so, the challenge of this chapter is simple. Live one full day as if the signal is already stable. Don't check. Don't beg. Don't wait. Walk, breathe, and move as the one who already knows. This is not pretense, it is embodiment. And embodiment is the only language the universe understands. Because in truth, you are not chasing a life. You are not waiting for a future. You are already shaping it. And when you finally stop waiting to become, you realize you already are. And now, as the story comes to rest, notice how quiet the air feels around you, as if the world itself has paused to listen to your breath. You are no longer chasing a future. You are no longer rehearsing absence. You are sitting here in this moment, broadcasting a signal that requires no proof, no urgency, no justification. The universe is not testing you. It is mirroring you. Every step, every word, every gentle inhale is a transmission that says, I am already here. And when life answers back, it is not a reward, but a reflection. This is the loop you've been remembering. The field responds not to what you hope for, but to what you stabilize. So walk forward lightly. Carry your frequency as quietly as a flame, and let the world shape itself around your presence. Nothing is missing. Nothing is delayed. You are already becoming, and becoming requires no effort, only being. Subscribe to our channel so we can meet again next time. And know that other stories, already waiting for you, are ready to unfold when you return.